Marvel Comics is home to a wide array of characters. We always get caught up talking about the big names, the Thors, the Spider-Mans, the Captain Americas, but what about the little guys? What about the ones that Marvel seems to have completely forgotten about and let disappear with no trace of what they've been up to or where their story is going? Characters like Daisy Johnson. Daisy Johnson, the awesomely powerful S.H.I.E.L.D. agent known as Quake, came on the scene in spectacular fashion as the secret weapon of Nick Fury during his Secret War. She was almost instantly a super popular character. Her power set is also very impressive to boot, as an inhuman with super strength, reflexes, speed, and endurance, all of which are known to be slightly greater than the likes of even Captain America. And of course, Quake's main power is vibration manipulation, which allows her to generate massive earthquakes, hence the name. Both her popularity and her power just kind of increased more and more over time, especially with her appearance in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show, but then it seemed that her appearances from that point onward just became less and less frequent, to the point that now she's just kind of gone? I think her last significant appearance was in 2015 in S.H.I.E.L.D. Volume 3 when she faced her own father, Mr. Hyde, and that's a bummer because many a fan loved seeing her. But from Nick Fury's ace in the sleeve to Spider-Man's forgotten sidekick, Alpha. The super incredibly powerful new Spider-Man sidekick known as Alpha seemed to come and go like a fart in the wind, and speaking as an avid farter, I would know. He first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man number 692 in August of 2012, and was a completely unimpressive Midtown High student who went to visit Horizon Labs where he got exposed to Parker particles, and yes, that's actually what they're called. He gained the ability to create a hyperkinetic form of cosmic energy tied to the forces of the universe that he could use in blasts and beams, and he could also let off massive explosions, and he had tons of other powers too. He became the spokesman for Horizon Labs and the sidekick to Spider-Man. But basically, he was super irresponsible and unpredictable with his power. For Spider-Man, power and irresponsibility do not go together, and so he depowered Alpha to only about 10% of his original power. Alpha just was not very well liked by fans, and while he continued to operate as a hero and got his own little solo series in 2013, he just kind of stopped appearing at all and has been all but forgotten by Marvel. Or we could talk about Omega the Unknown. Omega the Unknown is one of the wildest superhero concepts I have ever heard of. So basically, back in 1975, Steve Gerber created mechanical beings who lived out on a planet called Protaris, and they were going to be wiped out due to changes to their planet's climate that they just couldn't adapt to. So they created biological humanoid beings who could succeed them, and they sent these beings off to other sentient worlds where they could learn and gain skills that they would then pass on to their next model, constantly improving. James Michael Starling was the final model who was sent to Earth and raised by Protarian androids disguised as humans. He had a psychic connection to the previous model X3Z, who had gained the power of harnessing biospheric energy, which was then passed to James Michael Starling, and the Protarians knew that this power would be too much for their creations and decided to set out to destroy them. The character, or characters, as you can tell, were absolutely wild, but they didn't really stick with readers, with X3Z being destroyed by the police in Las Vegas and James completely vaporizing himself, and they just stayed gone until he came back, revealed to be stuck in Chthon's other realm in Darkhold Omega in 2022, but just as quickly as he came back, he was completely gone again. Or we could even talk about characters as cool as Darkhawk, who still get forgotten about. Darkhawk is one of the most frustrating characters that Marvel has, because honestly, he is so cool, but Marvel has no idea what to do with him. Christopher Powell was the son of a cop and a district attorney when he witnessed his father taking a bribe from a mob boss, and he stumbled upon an amulet that gave him the ability to transfer his consciousness to the Darkhawk armor. It was an ancient Shi'ar magical armor, and it was very cool, and it gave Chris quite the set of abilities. Obviously, he had the classic superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, and reflexes, but the armor allowed for armament conjuration from the extra-dimensional expanse and basically had untapped potential. When he first started out, he was a street-level hero, but over time, he got a huge power boost and stood shoulder to shoulder with the other big cosmic superheroes out in space. But then, they just didn't really know where to go from there. Connor Young became a new version of Darkhawk with an advanced suit of armor that returned the character back to his street roots, but he didn't really hit with fans. The original Christopher Powell character got left with a ton of unanswered questions and showed up last in 2019's Annihilation Scourge, and Connor Young was leading Volume 2 of Darkhawk, which just seemed to vanish, I guess. Just kinda stopped.
Today, there are no nerds and jocks. Set aside your differences because Stan Lee said so. In 2011, Marvel partnered with the NHL of all things to create superheroes for every team. The project was called the Guardian 30 Project, and for the most part, a team's hero would be an elevated version of their mascot. The Panthers is a panther, you get it. All 30 heroes were featured in the 2011 All-Stars game, which for anyone who doesn't know, like me until last year, the All-Stars game brings together all the best players from all the hockey teams across the league. 2011's special presentation even involved a cameo from Stan Lee and a laser show. These things weren't meant to just be pictures. A CGI animated short was created to debut the hockey heroes, and there were even future plans for comics, movies, TV series. They planned for these to tap into the younger audience of hockey fans and become wildly successful, but if that were the case, they wouldn't be on this list. They flopped hard. The main issues with the supers was that many of them were just existing character designs with one or two differences, and the storyline for the characters wasn't very compelling. They were drawings come to life instead of actual heroes in their own universe. Safe to say these heroes will probably be staying out of the game and in the penalty box for the future. Project Guardians wasn't the first time Stan Lee dipped into a new audience. In the year 2000, the Backstreet Project hit the shelves and the merch booth at the Backstreet Boys concerts. Backstreet Boy Nick Carter, a longtime comic fan, and Stan Lee, longtime comic creator, combined forces to create the band's superhero team. Carter came up with the idea and originally hoped it would become a 6-part comic series. However, when he sat down with Lee, the pair agreed on a single issue and a web series. The comic featured the band getting their powers for the first time, going from superstars to superheroes. The web series planned to have 22 episodes, but only 7 were aired, and none of the actual Backstreet Boys took part in it, which is disappointing. Even Burger King got in on the project, creating a line of action figures to go with their kids' meals. I want one. With the rise in Y2K trends over the years, I think it's time for the band and the book to make a comeback. Once again, we are back with another Stan Lee venture. His animated web series ended up becoming wildly successful, being picked up by Fox for TV distribution. It was called The Seventh Portal. The story centered around Peter Littlecloud, his friends, and an interactive video game. The game promises the opportunity to actually fight monsters like a superhero. It claims to use holographic projections for the gameplay. In the game, there are 7 dimensions, 6 are currently conquered by an evil villain, whereas the last one, our dimension, is safe. You choose a hero to play as to make sure the evil doesn't make its way through the portal. The game turns out too real for comfort. The way you really fight the monsters is by being transported into the screen in the parallel universe of Darkmoor. Peter and friends end up defeating the evil and restoring the universe to what it was before. The only change is that the crew gets to keep their superpowers so they can protect the Earth if needed. The series was so popular it was set to head to the silver screen, but nothing has been heard about that for about 2 decades, and it seems Peter Littlecloud will stay tucked away until it's actually picked up again. The Torpedo has had quite a few people behind the mask, but only one was a hero. Brock Peters witnessed a fight between the second Torpedo and Daredevil. Torpedo 2 went down and Peters tried to save him. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but was able to get Peters to promise to take up the Torpedo mantle before passing. The new Brock Peters Torpedo was the first to use the mantle for good, frequently teaming up with Daredevil. He retired from the suit once, but real life now paled in comparison to superhero adventures, and he took it back up again to help fight Chameleon. He was around for about 9 years before a battle with the Dire Wraths took him out, so technically he disappeared because he died, which is something that rarely sticks with Marvel, but I think this time it might. At first glance, the hero Sleepwalker looks like a villain, which causes way more problems than you would expect. The MCU judges books by their cover. In reality, Sleepwalker is not just his name, but also his job. The mindscape is a dimension that is in all sentient things, even you and me, and it has beings in it whose sole purpose is to be evil and make people go insane by invading their mind. The Sleepwalkers prevent this from happening and protect the minds of innocents. One of these Sleepwalker guardians was tricked by a longtime enemy into entering the mind of Rick Sheridan. The villain and hero fought in the dream, but when the villain escaped, our hero found that they couldn't, or at least that was the case for a little while. Pretty soon, it evolved into just remaining on Earth. Eventually, Rick learned of his Sleepwalker buddy, and the two became co-inhabitors of Rick's mind. The Sleepwalker used his time on Earth to fight the evil entities from the mindscape that materialized. The last time we saw Sleepwalker was in 2018 in Infinity War's Sleepwalker number 4, where he was very busy destroying nightmares and saving worlds. I hope we see him return. He seems neat.
There are so many crazy characters characters in Marvel Comics that some just get kind of forgotten sometimes, especially when it comes to villains, because those guys can get defeated and either sent to the afterlife or locked up in prison and we never have to think about them again. For example, we've got Armless Tiger Man. Gustav Hertz worked in a mechanical laboratory in Munich, Germany during the 1940s. Now unfortunately for Hertz, one day his arms got caught in a machine and had to be amputated. While this is a horrible thing to happen to anybody, Gustav did survive the experience and he was later given reading material on how to operate day to day without arms, instead using his mouth and feet to complete daily tasks. Turns out that he was really good at this. Hertz developed ridiculous skill in using his teeth and feet. He even took things a couple steps further. He sharpened his teeth into fangs so that he could bite people, and he even developed above average levels of strength and dexterity in his jaw, legs, and toes, allowing him to bend steel with his mouth, kick really hard, and throw daggers with his toes. He ended up proving how capable he was as a World War II enemy of the hero Angel and Wakanda, where he was completely destroyed by that era's Black Panther. What was really surprising was when he reappeared in Incredible Hercules number 129 to 131 in 2009. He was among a group of individuals that were the Greek god Pluto's jury of the undead, and they together put Zeus on trial and subdued Hercules himself. Past that though, Armless Tiger Man has appeared one more time in Ziggy Pig's Silly Seal Comics Volume 2, Number 1 in 2019, and let's be honest, no one really read that. Now, Hulk villains are always a fun thing to talk about because they are either super smart or incredibly powerful, both of which make for a fun read. The character Ravage is one villain that is both of those things wrapped into one, which makes it all the more puzzling that he has completely disappeared. Dr. Jeffrey Crawford was a former mentor of Bruce Banner, who used the Hulk's gamma radiation to cure himself of a debilitating neuromuscular disease, while pretending that he was trying to help Banner cure himself of the Hulk persona. Unfortunately, like a good chunk of others who subject themselves to gamma, Crawford became a big old green monster who was subject to fits of rage. But unlike a good chunk of other gamma mutates, Jeffrey kept his wits and was both an incredibly strong villain able to rival the Hulk physically, but also cunning and able to outthink the Hulk as well. He had this plan to try and become Ravage full-time instead of only temporarily hulking out. Banner had to team up with General Ross to try and bring him down, resulting in a huge brawl between the two Green Goliaths, but it was actually Major Talbot who used a cryogenic inducer to freeze Ravage, and he was kept in suspended animation at Gamma Base being researched for ways to defeat the Hulk himself, and the last mention of him was way back in 1998. What always boggles me is when a villain has an absolutely huge backstory that ties into the Elder Gods and the greater Marvel godly planes, but then they just never show up. For example, Akidna, or Echidna, however you want to pronounce it. Akidna, or Echidna, was an Elder Spawn, the granddaughter of the Elder God known as Set, who is a big deal in Marvel Comics. Set was the first Elder God to realize that he could steal the power of his other Elder Gods by consuming them, which kicked off a whole massive war between the Elder Gods, turning most of them into demons. So his granddaughter is not someone to mess with. Echidna is the mother of all monsters. She made Angerboda, Cerberus, Chimera, the Lernean Hydra, the Nemean Lion, and the Sphinx, just to name a few. Despite that though, in the modern day, she has been a part of some just straight up sucky teams. In 2013, she became a part of the second Doom Maidens team under Caroline LeFay, who were eventually able to resurrect Morgana LeFay. And in 2018, she became a part of Namor the Submariner's Defenders of the Deep when he decided that land dwellers weren't allowed in the ocean, and she stayed part of that Atlantean team until she turned on Namor and challenged him for the Atlantean throne and got defeated by Ghost Rider when the Avengers showed up back in 2021. Now, the villain Dr. Bong was a goofy villain even during the Golden Age. He has a metal ball where his left hand should be, and he uses it to create concussive blasts by eye, striking the appendage against his bell-shaped helmet. We actually have no idea how he came to become Dr. Bong, because his backstory mainly just touches on how he was a bullied kid who found power in writing and language, so then he became a very unethical reporter, and then tried to become a celebrity and joined up as a performer with a rock band where he would play different characters, and one of those performances got out of hand when his hand got cut off by a guillotine. I wish I was making that up. Now chronologically, he then appeared in Howard the Duck number 15 in May of 1977 as Dr. Bong with random knowledge of biological engineering and sonics. He faced Howard and eventually She-Hulk, and then in 2010's Deadpool Volume 2, the villain was reimagined just a smidge bit more threateningly as Deadpool's former therapist, and having cloned a team of superheroes, giving his clones regeneration abilities. He then joined a group called the Villains Anonymous, who all had run-ins with Spider-Man, and the last time he was seen was in 2014's Amazing Spider-Man Annual Volume 2, number 1.
Baron Zemo is one of my favorite villains when it comes to any and all that he opposes, but I think I especially love him as an Avengers villain, to be honest with you. Zemo, while certainly dangerous on his own, is also well known for leading his own popular villain group, the Masters of Evil. Not only is this group formidable as rivals to the Avengers, but they also at one point attempted to defeat the Avengers by, get this, replacing them. Yeah, this was when Baron Zemo came up with the plan to basically disguise the team of villains and rebrand them as a hero group, attempting to beat the Avengers at literally their own game. Enter the Thunderbolts. The initial Thunderbolts team, that is. It wouldn't be revealed until after this team had made a name for themselves both in canon and in comics who they truly were, and it was quite the impressive twist. When it comes to Zemo's recent appearances, he hasn't really been around much lately. We haven't seen him in the comics since he was most relevant as well in the MCU in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He last appeared in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier miniseries in the comics, which came out, like I said, around the time of the Disney Plus streaming series, so kind of in line with that. And Zemo was also of course featured in the Disney Plus series. We haven't seen him in the MCU or in the comics I believe since then really, although some folks are likely still hopeful in regards to the MCU version of Zemo that he'll be making some kind of appearance in Thunderbolts, I'm sure, but I'm still not sure if that's gonna happen. Annihilus is a weird but iconic villain. He hails from the Negative Zone and is also insectoid in his appearance. Annihilus basically has a cosmic magic wand that we know as the Cosmic Control Rod that he uses in his attempt to take over the Negative Zone. In more recent appearances, however, Annihilus chose to wear this rod as a sort of protective accessory, using it to protect himself against naturally occurring dangers such as aging, heat, and cold, in addition to gaining the ability to fly through space. He also initially became a villain of the Fantastic Four because they borrowed his cosmic rod to help treat the Invisible Woman during her pregnancy, which of course bothered Annihilus greatly, even though to be fair, they did actually return it. So while Annihilation is probably one of the most well-known events and stories involving Annihilus, he has actually been seen since then being used by Jonathan Hickman in his Avengers run, and also being used to fight against the Cancerverse in Annihilation Scourge. But that was back in 2019, so it's been a while since we've seen him in the spotlight as either a villain or a reluctant ally. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is the Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the epic Fear Itself event in terms of Marvel's chronological print history, and of course became overshadowed by that. Ultimately, it also felt less planned out, I would say. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikaboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War, where he was defeated. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his power to reverse life and death, meaning the dead heroes came back to life while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong, while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in their origin though when it came to their magic type. As cool of a character as the Chaos King was, however, we haven't really seen him since the primary event he was featured in, Chaos War. Honestly, I'd be down to see him come back. It's been like a really long time. You can make him a mastermind of something and people probably wouldn't even be expecting to see him because it's been so long. The Triune Understanding was an organization led by Jonathan Tremont. It was originally believed to be an organization focused on maximizing human potential, although it was later revealed to have, well, more villainous motives, of course. Tremont specifically used this organization and its resources to create a smear campaign to be used against the Avengers, to basically discredit them. He claimed the Avengers were intolerant of various religions and races and just tried to ruin their image completely. He also used his villainous brothers, Lord Templar and Pagan, in an attack specifically against the Avengers, which he then actually used to blame the superhero team for all the destruction that the fight had caused. What's truly wild is although this organization is not one of the most well-known Avengers enemies and they haven't been featured recently, the Triune Understanding still succeeded in getting both Thor and Captain America to leave the team for a bit. Surprisingly, despite their successes, however, we haven't really seen them for, I think, over 20 years in the comics. They just kind of faded away. Honestly, we should bring them back. They're pretty cool. While Wrongslide has been around recently, I wanted to include him here because I think ever since Rockslide became Wrongslide, he's been mainly relegated to a background character. Rockslide himself was also seemingly brought back just to be sacrificed during the Ten of Swords event in the lead up to the Otherworld tournament. He was one of the mutants who perished in Otherworld, allowing the mutants of Krakoa to learn that dying in Otherworld meant you basically couldn't be resurrected in the same way. Initially, it was actually believed you might not be able to be resurrected at all, but we later managed to bring back those fallen mutants. However, they were then very much changed by the experience permanently, turning Rockslide into a very different entity, which we even renamed as Wrongslide. Now, while Wrongslide did recently appear back in April 2024, it's important to note that 1, in that appearance he was again just completely removed, just killed off, and 2, this technically isn't even the same character as Rockslide, who perished way back during the Ten of Swords period during the Krakoan era, which was a few years ago now. It's actually weird to think that Ten of Swords happened that long ago. Feels in some ways like it was yesterday to me. I don't know, time is weird like that. Are there any events that you feel like just happened, but they definitely did not? Let me know in the comments. Eyeboy is a mutant with a higher level of perception because he's covered in eyeballs. Eyeboy might seem like a strange mutant and hero, but I'm gonna be honest, I cannot deny that I just downright love this guy. Even though, yeah, he's kind of a weird one to look at and to have, I don't know, thought up in terms of his existence even. Eyeboy has since been revealed to have more than just enhanced vision though. He can see things that others can't, basically seeing through to other planes at times, and also seeing and understanding the world around him on an atomic level, due to his inhuman level of sight. It's a pretty specific power, but can be super useful given the right circumstances. Eyeboy had a period in the Krakoan era where he was more relevant as he ended up on the X-Factor team for a while, investigating mutant mysteries, pretty fun, but unfortunately he has not been as prominently featured since the end of that series and its wrap-up story, Trial of Magneto. He has since appeared in the X-Men Unlimited series, which is part of Marvel's online-only exclusive Infinity line on Marvel Unlimited, but even there, I don't think he's appeared since like early last year, so it's still been quite a minute. Even with her ability actually being super cool and super useful, it's still a super gross one to be honest. That's right, we're talking about Husk. And it's no surprise that we forgot who Husk was for a bit, only to remember her again briefly during the Krakoan era, before almost immediately having her disappear just as quickly after she reappeared, it feels like. Husk is a mutant and member of the X-Men who is able to shed her skin to reveal a new composite layer underneath. For example, she sheds a layer of skin and underneath she could be fiery. Mostly this just sounds pretty heckin' awesome. She can kinda do it with like any materials as well. However, there have been times when Husk has been mentally unstable, resulting in her having less control over her abilities, and shedding your skin involuntarily, I'm gonna be real with you, that would be super disturbing. Not just the idea of it, but also when Husk sheds her skin involuntarily, it gets like all patchy and freaky looking, so I'm not surprised that she just kind of comes into the spotlight and then fades away. A member of the version of X-Force which would evolve into X-Statix, Anarchist joined the group as a replacement member after the death of Sluk. His powers include being able to produce electrochemical energy, which can be used to create powerful blast. How does he produce this energy? Why, through his acid sweat, of course. But that's right, when it comes to Anarchist, that is how he does it. Although the byproduct of his weird abilities are pretty awesome, the ability itself, sweating acid, honestly pretty nasty. Like sweat wasn't gross enough by itself. If you make it acid, it just kinda gets more disturbing and gross. Anarchist showed up last, I believe, in the first Excellent series, but even there he only appeared in a flashback, sadly. He also was shown to have joined the mutant nation of Krakoa, fun fact, but he's even been more of a background character there in regards to that.
The thought police in George Orwell's 1984 are probably the most famous, but Marvel has also toyed with the idea in 3 issues of Sleepwalker. Sleepwalker. 3 issues for 3 members. Marvel's Thought Police were made up of Wiretap. He could jam communications between any device. There was also Nightstick. He was a very strong brick wall of a man, not literal this time, and he was considered the group's leader. And finally, Cuffs, a regular woman with special mittens. She had gauntlets that would expel highly versatile liquid similar to clay that she could manipulate to attack from a distance. The trio tricked the Fantastic Four into helping with their mission of ending the hero Sleepwalker. Sleepwalker does look like a villain, so the Fantastic Four judge a book by its cover and agree to help. Sleepwalker is connected to a human host, so they must go into the host's mind to get him. But once the F4 realize that Sleepwalker isn't the villain, they turn on the trio. Everybody battles, and then eventually the Thought Police and Fantastic Four are back on Earth. The Thing was about to clobber the group, but they were considered to be part of a government-sanctioned operation, and if he did, he would be arrested. So the Thought Police are left with a government high-up, and who knows where they are now. That was back in 1991 in issues 14, 15, and 16 of Sleepwalker. We have a member of another brotherhood in the house. This time we are looking at Lifter of the Brotherhood of Mutants. Lifter's abilities include density manipulation. He can give himself super strength just by changing his body density. He can also manipulate gravity, reducing its effect on what he touches. Magneto created the Brotherhood, but when he left the picture, the group changed their name to become Mutant Force. They were working for Mandrill as soldiers for hire fighting the Defenders. Then the Mutant Force moved on to join the Secret Empire as thugs, again battling the Defenders. The group reinvented themselves a second time, becoming the Resistance, a group against the Mutant Registration Act. Lifter and Mutant Force would protest by causing disturbances around the world and organizing rallies. All good things must come to an end, and eventually the villain squad parted ways. Back in 2021, Lifter ended up volunteering to have his powers taken by Snark, so I think he has truly disappeared to go live a normal life. Good for him. This next man is iconic. Literally, his name is Icon. He appeared in 2 issues, Excalibur 59 and 60. He was a Wakandan biochemist who experimented on himself in their advanced labs. He ended up giving himself the ability to turn himself and others into wood. With his newfound power, he set his eyes on the Wakandan throne. He had the idea in his head that Black Panther did not respect him as a scientist. One night during a celebration, Icon shows up and starts turning people to wood. Luckily, the Avengers are in attendance, something Icon did not plan for. He does have an ace up his sleeve. When someone is turned into wood, they are then under his control. Black Panther will not let the Avengers attack the wooden people as they are his subjects. But worry not, out of nowhere comes this guy called Jungle Man to distract Icon, giving the Avengers their moment to start the fight. Only Icon surrenders very quickly. See, his whole plan rested on taking the throne quickly through fear, because the turning to wood thing only lasts an hour. The change back makes him pass out and he's carried away by Black Panther. That's all, folks. He was an old man, so maybe natural causes took him out, but he is literally never seen again. Coldheart, a villain with a point. Sadly, she hasn't been seen since Avengers Standoff. Coldheart has had a tragic life. Her son was caught in the crossfire of a hero and villain's battle and sadly passed away. From that day on, the heartbroken mother has hated heroes because she believes they never get a proper punishment for when they level a city during a fight and innocent lives are lost. She has a point. To get her revenge on the heroes of the world, she stole her costume from the government agency she worked for. Her suit is bulletproof and comes with 2 cryonic swords that can freeze anything they touch. She primarily fights Spider-Man, and he is one of the only heroes that has survived her pursuit of them. She was inspired by his good nature and genuine want to protect civilian lives that she let him go. She eventually lands herself in prison, but escapes into Avengers. This woman is tough. She survived the Stamford explosion, and then ends up in S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Pleasant Hill prison, eventually joining in on the massive Avengers Standoff battle. And then we haven't seen her since. She is a highly trained martial artist and swordswoman, suggesting that she was probably a field agent of some sort when she worked at the agency. So maybe she just slipped away and is living a quiet life again.
But does anyone here remember Ultra Girl? First appearing in Ultra Girl #1 from the mid-90s, you'd think that Susanna Sherman's origins and childhood would have been explained in her own solo series, but no, that is not the case for Ultra Girl. Her mutant abilities manifested when a Sentinel identified her, but she wasn't just a mutant. Susanna was actually a half Kree mutant, and her real Kree name was, get this, Susanna. It's just Susanna, but with a T at the beginning. We don't know if she was born on Earth or was brought here, but we do know that she was raised on Earth by a group of pink Kree, and they had this whole prophecy that she was going to be the ultimate unifier, eventually restoring glory to the Kree Empire by defeating both the Shi'ar and the blue-skinned Kree. She had awesome strength, enhanced vision, a healing factor, and the ability to fly, and she used those abilities as a member of the Initiative. She even eventually struck up a friendship with Carol Danvers, being specifically chosen by her to become the new Miss Marvel, which you would think would be kind of a huge deal. Well, during Dark Reign, Norman Osborn acquired the rights to that title and the costume, and he gave it to Moonstone instead to become Miss Marvel on his Dark Avengers team, and Ultra Girl just kinda had to deal with it. She went on to appear as an applicant to babysit Luke Cage and Jessica Jones' daughter. She showed up at Avengers Academy prom night, formed up with the Initiative again during Fear itself, fought against an evil version of the Young Avengers, and hasn't been seen in any meaningful way since 2014. Now, bear with me here for this next point because it's Adam Warlock. This is gonna be strange to say, but in a world of superheroes and like godly beings, Adam Warlock is like a myth or a legend. He shows up for some humongous cosmic events, but then just as he appears, he disappears again. First appearing in 1967 in Fantastic Four number 66, Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave, who were experimenting to create a perfect human specimen. This made him super strong, durable, fast, and able to store and use huge amounts of cosmic energy to make him fly, release blasts, and all kinds of things, including cocooning himself to help him heal and regenerate. Now, every time he cocoons and regenerates, he actually comes out more powerful than what he went in with and evolves new powers. He's able to use quantum magic, which lets him teleport, make force fields, move at the speed of light, create wormholes, resurrect himself and others. He has cosmic awareness, and he can manipulate, remove, and judge the souls of other people. This guy is basically like a big old Deus Ex Machina, but that's the problem. He gets reborn, attunes to a new universal threat, defeats that threat, and disappears again. The last time he showed up was in 2018's Infinity Wars, which kinda sucked, and he just kinda showed up, went inside the Soul Stone, helped save the day, transported Gamora somewhere completely random in the universe, gave the Infinity Stone sentience, and then he disappeared again, yet to be seen since. But now we're gonna go way back for the Rawhide Kid. A gunslinger from the 1800s with dozens of cowboy adventures to brag about, Johnny Rawhide Kid Bart is one of Marvel Comics' oldest characters, but also one they have seemingly tried to sweep under the rug. Just for a little bit. Johnny Bart got his own adult-oriented reboot under the Max imprint, where he was reimagined into a gay gunslinger, and the portrayal of homosexuality within that comic was super criticized for being stereotypical, campy, just plain offensive. What could have been the Rawhide Kid's big push from his relative obscurity instead became a big old embarrassment that Marvel had to apologize for, and they subsequently buried the Rawhide Kid. He's had some moments working with the Avengers and the West Coast Avengers, but otherwise has pretty much been relegated to background cameos. Now, similar to the Rawhide Kid, the Masked Raider is another one of the oldest cowboy heroes in comics, debuting at a time when cowboys were the dominant trend. But because that was literally just the trend of the time, the Masked Raider was quickly lost to time, just like a lot of the other cowboy heroes, the Rawhide Kid included. They revived him in their 1000th issue in 2019, but completely reimagined the Masked Raider as a multiversal legacy, meaning the title was to be passed on to different people. Now, this huge change to the Masked Raider's backstory and purpose got people pretty excited for what was to come. Marvel even had the Masked Raider's new inheritor teased through cameos and guest appearances with the character in possession of the Eternity Mask, and then just as he was revealed to be some guy named Dr. Carlo Zoda, Marvel buried the whole thing in a really hard to follow time loop in Defenders Volume 6 at the start of 2022, and we haven't really seen him since. But how about a character that hangs out with the X-Men? Hepsa, an alien from the Mephistoid species. Hepsa escaped her planet after she was condemned to become food at a Shi'ar Imperial banquet. Together with her fellow prisoners, she formed the Starjammers, a team of intergalactic travelers with different abilities, and she also became the love interest of Corsair, who was the father of Cyclops, Havoc, and Vulcan, the Summers brothers. After Vulcan wiped out Corsair and Hepsa ended up stranded on Earth, she basically joined up with the X-Men despite not actually being a mutant. She donned an X-Men suit and accompanied them on missions, specifically creating a bond with Warpath. She fought against the Hulk in World War Hulk without doing diddly squat to the guy. She joined up with X-Force, moved to Utopia with the mutants, almost got deported from Earth by sword, and then in All New X-Men Volume 1 number 23 from 2014, she managed to return to space with the Starjammers and a returned Corsair, and that is basically as far as it goes. We have not seen her in any significant way since then. And now for this point, Griffin Gogal was just an ordinary plumber with a smoking habit doing his ordinary job when an elderly psychologist couldn't afford to pay the plumbing bill. So instead, this psychologist offered to cure Griffin's smoking habit through hypnosis. Well, what do you know? This psychologist was actually an alien, and the hypnosis had the added benefit of unlocking Griffin's superhuman abilities, which are basically just the same abilities as Superman and the ability to perform any skill at an ultra level. Captain Ultra basically became a joke character. With his new powers, he went out to try and find a new purpose, applying to be a part of a bunch of different teams, both heroic and villainous. Teams like the Frightful Four, who rejected him for his fear of fire, the Defenders, who accepted him but very briefly, the Initiative, who made him babysit other heroes, and the Revengers. It was with the Revengers where he got himself arrested and he ended up in prison, and he moved around to different prisons but hasn't really been seen again since 2016, as far as I can tell. I think the fact that he just never became that popular can be for a handful of reasons. For starts, his absolutely horrible painter's palette of a costume, but then there's his incredibly generic name, and the fact that his powers are just Superman but not as strong, and there are a whole handful of characters with the same kind of thing, but even stronger.
The MCU has created multiple household names over the years, but there are so many heroes that deserve the spotlight that unfortunately some of them get lost to history waiting for their triumphant return. Take this first family for example. You might know the Brown family thanks to Spider-Punk from the new Spider-Verse movie, but that family also exists in the 616 universe. Two notable heroes have emerged from the family of 11, Hobie as the Prowler and his older brother Abraham as the Black Tiger. Since Hobie has popped up a lot, we're focusing on the latter. Abraham Brown is a martial arts superstar that first appeared in April of 1974. He met and quickly became friends with other martial artists, Lin Sun and Bob Diamond. The trio found a set of jade tiger amulets and decided to become the Sons of the Tigers. The trio later dispersed after a series of personal arguments and they lost their amulets. But before breaking up, they teamed up with other heroes like Spider-Man and the Human Torch. To take some time off, Abe was hopping on a plane to Algeria, but his suitcase had been switched. The new one containing the Black Tiger costume. Unfortunately for Abe, two other not so nice guys were also looking for this costume and hijacked his plane. But Abe is a superhero, so he survived. He managed to chase and capture one of the men, but they were then captured by a local tribe and forced to duel Black Panther style to see who will become the Black Tiger. We know how this ends. Brown officially takes up the Black Tiger mantle, and his last known activities took place in 2017 as a member of the Penance Corps. Sometimes real life and the characters on the page are one in the same, and this is especially true in the case of the second Human Fly. The first was a villain, but this ain't about him. Our Human Fly superhero was a regular young man who got into a bad car accident. His injuries were very serious, which led to him receiving a new skeleton made of steel. He was told that he will be paralyzed for the remainder of his life, but the Human Fly resolved that he would learn to move again. He began training his body and worked for years until he was even stronger than he was before the accident. He used his newfound strength and skills for good and became the Human Fly. This didn't come without confusion. The original Human Fly still existed. Spider-Man had a run-in with the hero at one point, thinking he was the evil guy. The Human Fly would also sometimes do daredevil stunts to raise money for charities for children with disabilities. We never actually learn his name in the comics, but that's okay because we know his name in real life. The Human Fly hero is based on the very real stuntman Rick Rahat. The tagline for the comic book was, "The wildest superhero ever," because he's real. And the book itself featured photos of Rick in the Human Fly suit. reboot. One story that many Marvel fans hope will disappear is that of US-1, or the story of Ulysses Solomon Archer. The series is only 12 issues long and yet packed in a fight with a German Zeppelin captain, motorcycle gang, and aliens. The main problem people have had with this comic is the plot seems so unbelievable, a hard feat to accomplish when it comes to superheroes. But I guess an intergalactic trucker would do the trick. The reason for this seemingly odd plot choices is because the series was based on a line of toys, the Tyco toy slot car racing line. That is why the main character, Ulysses, wants to be a trucker so badly and even has a custom-built semi-truck, missiles, and other fun gadgets. The gadgets aren't just in his truck, they are also in his head. In the first issue, Ulysses and his brother are driving down the highway but are run off the road by the main villain of the story, the Highwayman. The brother doesn't make it and Ulysses is barely holding on. To save his life, he gets a very durable metal skull replacement. The new skull is able to pick up on radio transmissions, which comes in pretty handy. After this limited run was over in 1984, he makes a few appearances in the sensational She-Hulk, Annihilators, and Deadpool team-up. The last time he was seen on panel was in New Avengers Volume 2, number 7. He's featured in a lineup of potential nannies to Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's daughter. He doesn't get the job, unfortunately. This next bunch went from one parody to another. The Powerhouse Pachyderms were originally planned to be a parody of other crime-fighting animal group, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The whole thing is a pretty funny concept. Instead of crime-fighting turtles, it's crime-fighting elephants. Their name? The Adult Thermonuclear Samurai Elephant. Iconic. However, not everything went to plan and there were some significant delays, and so Marvel was forced to change the name and said that they were now a parody of the X-Men. Either way, the team of 4 first appeared in Power Pachyderms issue 1 in 1989, and that's it. That's all we ever get. The issue itself is a gem. We learn that the elephants were supercharged when their train car bound for the zoo was unhooked from the train by a monkey, and they happened to jump track to one that leads to a nuclear test zone. Then there's a big explosion, and that exposes the elephants to radiation, turning them into super elephants. They rejoin the circus briefly before heading off on their own, only to come back together to fight Clarinetto, former head of the Brotherhood of Musicians. The super elephants fight and defeat Clarinetto and his band of celebrity ninja impersonators. If it sounds ridiculous, that's because it is. The last panel even tells you to not take it seriously, and the elephants haven't been seen since 1989. The Sleaze Brothers also kicked off in 1989. What was in the air that year? This 6-issue limited series was specifically designed for adults. John Carnell is responsible for creating this wacky comic. The entire thing is a spin-off from a one-off comic strip created for Doctor Who called Follow That TARDIS. This story follows a pair of brothers who grew up as orphans, but not on the Earth we know. Their Earth is far in the future and looks kind of like if you find steampunk and 80s neon aesthetics and use that to build a city. It's full of pollution and crimes and monsters and aliens and very corrupt and generally unwelcoming. So that's the vibe, and the job the brothers have picked to survive this harsh landscape is private investigator. They are good at what they do, getting the right results, even if they don't always use the most morally sound methods. The comic itself wasn't received well, and the first issue didn't sell well. The brothers were seen in the totally stonking, surprisingly educational, and utterly mind-boggling comic relief comic, and then the backup story in Image Comics' Elephant Men issue 16. And then they haven't been seen since.
Now this next one may be one of the more revolting villains out there, and it only gets worse when you learn that Douglas Carmody, the Bogeyman or Boogeyman, was a villain to the Power Pack, a group of kids. Carmody was in charge of the Carmody Research Labs, where Dr. James Power was working to perfect his antimatter power generator. When the Power Pack gained their abilities from the destruction of the generator, Carmody lost his job and essentially blamed the Power Pack for it all. Classic villain backstory. He then went on to hunt the Power Pack, considering them mutants even though they weren't. He stole a battlesuit from Project Pegasus, and using this suit to try and wipe out the Power Pack, he ended up coming into battle with Asgard's Warriors 3 and the New Mutants. Now in Power Pack number 40, a demon named Nastir, I think is how you pronounce it, invaded New York City, and he turned several people, including Bogeyman or Boogeyman, into demons. And for Carmody, he basically embraced it completely, permanently staying as a demon while the others returned to normal. He tried to wipe out the Power Pack again with his new abilities, but then he saw himself in a reflection and went tumbling off a building. That was back in 1988. He appeared one more time in 1993's Cage Volume 1, number 19, facing Luke Cage, where he apparently passed away. But this isn't confirmed, and so he is basically considered missing, which isn't at all a pleasant thought. Now, similar to how the High Evolutionary created the New Men, he also created the Man Beast from a red wolf that he genetically modified. However, unlike Unlike the new men, Man-Beast was created using a new isotope which granted him a heightened physicality and enhanced mental capabilities, also granting him a greater level of ambition. He terrorized Counter-Earth, or more accurately, he led a revolt against the High Evolutionary, which, I mean, that isn't really so bad, that guy sucks. But he was eventually stopped by Thor before he could do real damage. He tried this 2 more times actually, being defeated by Wolverine and Kitty Pryde the first time, and then on Counter-Earth, he was stopped by Adam Warlock, who slightly devolved Man-Beast, which is kind of terrifying to think about. He would then return again on Earth as the Hate-Monger, having seemingly re-evolved back into his normal self, but then he was defeated by Spider-Man and he was thought to be actually killed, but nope! He actually tried to stop the High Evolutionary again, infiltrating his Knights of Wondergore in the late 90s. Unfortunately for the Man-Beast, the High Evolutionary and Quicksilver devolved him back into a wolf, but he's returned from that before, so who knows? Next up is the villain known as Belladonna. Belladonna was actually a Spider-Man villain, but it's more accurate to call her a villain to another Spidey villain, Roderick Kingsley, aka Hobgoblin. But before that ever happened, Belladonna was Narda Ravana, a European fashion designer. The problem was that Kingsley was another famous fashion designer, only one that stole from other designers. Kingsley allegedly stole Ravana's designs and marketed them in the United States, stealing her success, and for that, I guess he had to pay. Swearing vengeance, Narda assumed the guise of Belladonna and put together a small group of henchmen. She used toxic gas as her main tool, creating gas that could dissolve Spider-Man's webs, taking people's lives and having her henchmen dress as the Prowler to distract Spider-Man, all for the end goal of wiping out Kingsley from the face of the earth. The most ironic part of this whole situation though is that Belladonna just didn't have the popularity needed to be a lasting villain, getting arrested in 1980, while Kingsley, he became the Hobgoblin and he's been causing problems all the way up until 2020 and is bound to come back at some point. Okay, so next up is a group of obscure villains made for the express purpose of facing another obscure group of heroes. Heavy Metal was a team made up of a group of cybernetically enhanced, super intelligent animals with weaponized exoskeletons. Can't get much more comic booky than that. Their team members included Armory, an octopus because arms, get it? Tail Gunner, a vulture, Bloodbath, a shark, Ramrod, a rhino, and they were led by Uproar, a blue-faced gorilla. Now this team was created by Adam Frost of Multicorp as a prototype, privately owned attack force set to oppose the team known as Brute Force, which is also a team of cybernetically enhanced super intelligent animals with weaponized exoskeletons. Also created by Multicorp, but they were created by Dr. Randall Pierce, and these guys were good. Except the problem is both of these teams were really just a part of Weapons Plus, the ones who created Captain America and eventually Wolverine, and they are not exactly the best people around. Heavy Metal was around for 4 issues of the Brute Force comic in 1990, and they have never been seen since. Remember back when I talked about Akidna or Echidna, and we talked about the Defenders of the Deep? Well, this team was basically filled with water-based villains that had nothing better to do, and one of them was a guy called Tiger Shark. So get this, Todd Arliss was a swimmer who took part in the Olympic Games. Cool. He ended up damaging his spinal cord when he rescued a drowning man. Dang. He was so desperate to regain his swimming ability that he then willingly participated in an experiment by the scientist Dr. Lemuel Dorcas. Interesting. The doctor blended Arliss's DNA with that of Namor the Submariner and a tiger shark, because of course he did. This experiment was totally successful, only it completely changed Arliss both physically and mentally. Now he had razor sharp teeth and gills and had become savage and incredibly aggressive. He became a supervillain and named himself Tiger Shark, becoming an adversary for Namor the Submariner. Now funnily enough though, after years and years of battling against Namor and the superhero community, he joined the Defenders of the Deep, and now he hasn't been seen since 2019 when they attacked an oil drilling platform in Alaska. And last up for today is Bram Velsing. For starters, he has an incredibly strange name that is very obviously a reference to Bram Stoker and his character Van Helsing. So, Bram Velsing, also known as Dread Knight, Knight is better known as an enemy to Tony Stark in the Ultimate Universe. Unfortunately, in the 1610 universe, he just becomes another Iron Man villain that creates another Iron Man-like armor. But in Earth 616, Bram Velsing was actually a Latverian scientist who didn't like Dr. Doom's schemes and was punished by having a mask fused to his face. He became kind of like a villain, but also a servant to Dr. Doom in a way, allying himself with Victoria Frankenstein and the creations of Victor Frankenstein, which would make you think that he was actually a hero, but he was never played that way. He eventually moved on from being just a Dr. Doom villain and has gone on to fight Iron Man on a few occasions, as well as the Black Knight and Spider-Man. He was this really cool looking armored up man with an even cooler mask, wielding a super cool lance, riding a black winged horse. It was dope, but curiously, while he's never actually been sent to the afterlife, his last appearance was serving Dr. Doom in Iron Man Legacy Volume 1 Number 3 back in 2010, and he hasn't been seen since.
Power Broker has always been a mysterious figure, and not just in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where fans of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series spent some time trying to decipher the Power Broker's true identity. Even now, some people still do not believe to this day that the reveal is even the true one, and there are still some out there that theorize there could still be a Power Broker working behind Sharon Carter and simply using her as a front for their true identity. In the comics, Power Broker has always been a villain shrouded in mystery, and even today we still do not know the true identity of the modern day Power Broker from the comics. Initially, Power Broker was Curtis Jackson, but even before his death in 2012, there had been a new Power Broker that was introduced on the scene, making their first appearance in Avengers The Initiative Annual in 2008. Their identity still remains unknown, I believe. It's been more than 10 years and we're still not sure exactly who that is. The more modern version of Power Broker even still hasn't been seen since 2023. What are some villains that you haven't seen for some time that you would like to see come back? Definitely one of the weirdest weirdos out there for me is this next villain we're about to talk about. Even his name just sounds so cosmically weird and fantastic. Zemo. Now, Zemo might not be a full-on Avengers team villain, but he is a villain of one of the mainstay Avengers, the Hulk. He was an alien cyborg prisoner who escaped from exile only to crash land on Earth. Zemo initially hoped to control the minds of the people of Earth and get them to build him a new spaceship. Now, the problem with this new spaceship is that it would be so powerful that its launch would in essence destroy the Earth. Tell you what, that's definitely a cosmic criminal right there. Zemo is a psionic being who can hypnotize his victims and control their minds. He can also use hosts to heal himself, in essence transforming their body into his until there is simply nothing resembling them or their mind left. Even stranger, Zemo was technically the first character to be known as the Hulk before the creation of the Bruce Banner turned Green Giant version of that character. While Zemo was recently brought back during the often praised Immortal Hulk run, since he was dealt with there, he has only made a few more appearances. And mysteriously too, since during Immortal Hulk I believe he was permanently defeated there. We haven't seen Zemo since his brief appearance though in the Infinity comic X-Men Unlimited, which can exclusively be read digitally on the Marvel Unlimited app. Zemo anyways last appeared there in 2022. Honestly, one of the deeper cuts on our list is this next one, Space Phantom, or Space Phantoms sometimes. Initially believed to be the name of the character, we would later learn through various retcons that Space Phantom was more of a title or like a label than a true individual character name. Space Phantom is known for being a sower of chaos. Initially in the comics, Space Phantom made their first appearance in Avengers issue number 2, where they attempted to invade Earth by nullifying the Avengers team, shapeshifting into various characters in order to sow discord between the Avengers. Space Phantom initially claimed to be from space and claimed they were just kind of scouting ahead to get ready for an alien invasion that was behind them. And while this at some point might have been true, it's now believed that Space Phantoms actually hail from temporal limbo. Not Magic's limbo, but instead Immortus's realm, which exists outside of time. But while in limbo, they were basically warped during their stay there. They have also been used as agents of Immortus, the Kang variant, in the past as such. The Red Ghost started out as a Fantastic Four villain. He is a Russian communist who was known for his mad science. He studied and sought to recreate the mutating effects of the cosmic rays, which were responsible for giving the Fantastic Four their powers, of course. Ivan Kragoff built a ceramic ship that instead went up into space with a team of apes. He and his apes gained powers. Ivan himself gave him the power to appear intangible, hence his name as the Red Ghost, and he became a leader of these super apes. Later on, he would team up with the Mole Man and end up fighting against the Avengers while they attempted to rescue their kidnapped teammate Giant Man from Mole Man's clutches. He was also thwarted by the Avengers later on when he attempted to rob a bank with his team of super apes. Red Ghost also made his most recent appearance in an Avengers comic, I believe, although not the main title, not the main Avengers team. Instead, he appeared back in 2021 in Savage Avengers written by Jerry Dugan. For some of the weirdest heroes, we can look to the Great Lakes Avengers, who are generally known for being a much more wacky and often eccentric team of heroes whose powers are oddly specific in a way that usually doesn't seem too useful, I'd say. Case in point, Doorman. Doorman got a power upgrade after his death, but before that his powers weren't really that extraordinary, at least not in how they were presented in the comics. Also, he was stuck with the bizarre name of Doorman, so, you know, that could have probably been better. Doorman was so named because he could use his powers to act as a doorway for people, allowing them to pass through solid barriers. This, however, is actually because of Doorman's connection to, fun fact, the Dark Dimension, which he uses to allow people to pass through him, effectively teleporting them through barriers via the Dark Force. His attachment to the Dark Force also gives him a slew of other useful abilities at this point, similar to Magic or Kitty Pryde, you might say, although, you know, neither of them are necessarily attached to the Dark Dimension, they have their own things, but I digress. And fun fact, while Doorman is not known for being an X-Men and instead is known for his affiliation rather with the GLA or the GLI primarily, he also just so happens to be a mutant, which is why I've included him here. So in that way, he is somewhat connected to the team while still being very much removed from it. But hey, he's still a mutant, so I'm gonna count him. Bailey Hoskins is known for being the worst X-Man ever, probably because his powers are pretty lackluster sounding, to be real with you, but managed to pack a pretty big bang when they do get used. Bailey's powers involve self-detonation, but the only thing is that activating his powers will actually also, unfortunately, result in his death, meaning he can only use them once, and doing so will, yes, kill him. However, he does end up doing this, and in doing so actually saves the entire world, or at least a world. His good friend and teammate Miranda has reality warping powers that are extremely powerful, propelling her into her own classification of mutant even, beyond Omega. But even then, Miranda can't seem to interfere in this world. It seems that she needs some help from Bailey, and in sacrificing himself he not only saves the world, but also seemingly helps Miranda to fix it and set it right again. Bailey is definitely a mutant who was introduced only to disappear right after his story concluded because he was kind of just created just for that story, but this is also because his story is believed to be set in a totally different universe. His story is an interesting one, and the idea of his character is honestly just fascinating to me, and I'd love to see it in the main continuity. A mutant who is with the X-Men but whose power basically is a one-time use, making him appear pretty much normal despite being a mutant, and also making him mostly useless as a mutant superhero, at least, you know, for most of his life. While a student at the Xavier Institute, I don't believe Slick ever made the main X-Men team, nor has he been featured on any spin-off mutant team either, I believe, but still, Xavier Institute, so we're counting him. Slick's powers were charisma based. He basically exuded charisma and made himself likable. He could also cast illusions, as we'd later learn when he and Quentin Quire's Kid Omega butted heads. The two didn't get along, and at one point Quire used his powers to just dispel the illusions that Slick was constantly casting. Honestly, a pretty rude move, but that's what happened. These illusions made him appear as a handsome young man, but this was not actually his true appearance, it turned out. He also had a physical mutation as a mutant and appeared as a small, web-footed creature with pointed ears. Kind of impish or goblin looking, if you will. After having his true appearance revealed at the moment when he was working on a song with his girlfriend Tattoo, she broke up with him. I feel bad for Amber. She got one pretty cool story where she is clearly established as a college kid who just wants to live her life, and despite being a mutant, doesn't really let this define who she is or what she's capable of. And then, right after we think, wow, that's really cool, that's a really interesting take on what being a mutant could be like, Amber could be a really cool character to follow along, just even in this like kind of slice of life story with her, or especially if she was pulled into becoming a mutant superhero and had to join the X-Men or something like that. But no, she gets depowered during M-Day, or at least that's what I believe happened to her. I don't think she's ever specifically seen after her adventure with Jono that she appears in during her appearance in his Chamber series. Amber was definitely weird to behold because her default physical mutation made her green and covered her in spikes, but she was also a shapeshifter who typically shapeshifted into a beautiful woman, but only in her dreams, so only when she was really sleeping. She could also control this ability though, I think. I think she just mainly preferred to appear as she was naturally. Kinda like Mystique, but what if Mystique wasn't a baddie and just kinda wanted to like chill and go to college? Honestly, a super interesting story. I wish Amber wasn't just this kind of one-off character, but that's kinda what she became, honestly.
Not every Marvel villain gets the fame and fortune and fans. Sometimes they are left in the shadows of obscurity, waiting for the day the sun shines upon them again. Today is that day. Spidey Super Stories are full of villains we never see again. It was a series created in partnership with the children's educational show The Electric Company. The villains can be equally as scary as the ones in the comics, but sometimes they're also a little bit goofy. One goofy guy is the Wall. He is a brick wall. Literally. His backstory is tragic. He was a teen with an after-school construction job. A pile of bricks fell on him and he fused with his body, making him a wall. I feel for him. I've said it before, I'll say it again. One of my top irrational fears is that I will be confused with an object if our atoms line up. Poor guy. He's very mad about his circumstance, valid, and takes his anger out on Spider-Man, who had nothing to do with it. And on Spider-Man's day off too. The battle took place at a baseball game because that's what Spidey was doing on his day off. It's very clear that the Wall survives. Him and Spider-Man get kicked out of the game and are seen chilling on a bench outside. But that's it. He's just gone after. The only other thing I can find about him is his Marvel Strike Force profile posted April 1st, 2021. Hopefully he's out there right now getting de-walled by one of the many geniuses of the Marvel Universe. From the X-Men side of it all, we have Spectra. The poor girl is from an unnamed dimension that was consumed by a world eater. She is the only survivor of the event, but there are also other universes that went through the same thing. She ended up joining a group of other survivors called the Magical Resistance. The Resistance encounters the X-Men, and believing them to be working with the World Eater, attack strike to kill style, forcing the X-Men to escape to different dimensions. When the Resistance meets the X-Men a second time, Spectre uses her lie detecting powers to figure out that they are all on the same side, and she helps the X-Men fight the World Eater. The World Eater is slain, causing a massive burst of energy. Spectre is able to fly into bodies to control them. She did this to Storm in the first battle, and it implies that she's kind of like a ghost. There is a very real possibility that the energy explosion vortex thing didn't hurt her, and she's just left because the World Eater was taken care of. She hasn't been seen since 2017's Extraordinary X-Men issue 16, but I think she deserves to make a comeback as a hero. She did have some character development and ended up as an ally to the X-Men. Flying Tiger has been around since 1981, debuted in Spider-Woman 40, and then disappeared in Amazing Spider-Man 18 in 2018. Flying Tiger was a former American football player. When his professional career failed, he turned his skills to villainhood. He became a talented assassin with a 100% success rate, until Spider-Woman, of course. Since his debut, he has battled Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, and of course the last hero to see him alive, Spider-Man. The thing is, we don't have a confirmation that he died. In Amazing Spider-Man 18, Spider-Man, along with most villains he's fought in his career, are being chased by Robot Kraven the Hunters. Taskmaster and Black Ant created robots modeled after Kraven so they could host the Great Hunt, an event where the rich can pay large amounts of cash to get put in a virtual reality space where they control the robots and are able to get revenge on the villains that wronged them. The rich do not hold back. We see the iguana either die or get critically injured. Flying Tiger is tackled mid-air, and that's all we see. He's not in the comics after it, so it's unclear whether he escaped or not. J. Jonah Jameson may make Peter Parker's life infinitely more difficult than needed, but nobody deserves to have their birthday cake stolen, and by a villain, no less. The Birthday Bandit is another goofy villain created for the Spidey Super Stories. His entire thing is that he goes around ruining birthdays by stealing all the party supplies. The biggest birthday cake in the city currently belongs to the Triple J, and the Birthday Bandit wants it. He breaks into the building, grabs the massive cake, only to be webbed by Spider-Man. Unfortunately, the damage is done and the cake is completely ruined. Jameson walks into a smashed cake and doesn't know whether to blame Spider-Man or the Bandit. He does chuck a piece of cake at Spider-Man though, and poor Peter is forced to spend his day off in his birthday suit doing laundry. The Bandit is presumably sent to jail, but who knows if this wacky villain will make a comeback. Happy birthday to anybody who is celebrating today, but keep an eye out just in case the Bandit is still on the loose. Personally, With all the wacky villains that Spider-Man has had to deal with, I think we need a Lego Spider-Man movie the way that they did Lego Batman, because in Lego Batman they brought back all the random people he's fought over the years no matter how goofy they are, so I think we need one for Spider-Man. That's personally my choice for this, but let me know in the comments down below which hero you would pick. From the same universe and looking equally as ridiculous is Fancy Dancer. This guy is a bigger deal than the last one, okay? Spider-Man has had to team up with Miss Marvel this time to take him down. Fancy Dancer kidnapped the principal dancer in the ballet and planned to take her back to his studio. He gets found by the two heroes backstage and a fight breaks out. Numerous blows and dance puns are thrown around until Spider-Man takes him out by pushing him in a fountain. The kidnapped dancer is returned to the ballet and Fancy Dancer is never seen again. Former head of the Brotherhood of Evil Musicians hasn't been seen since his debut in the Powerhouse Pachyderms in 1989. Clarinetto is an intelligent man. He has been posing as a music teacher at a music conservatory, but he wasn't teaching people music, he was teaching them to become celebrity impersonator warriors. There is a musical battle of epic proportions that takes place, and it ends with one of the super elephants creating a super blast that takes out the school and presumably everyone in it. We don't see Clarinetto ever again, which could be because he was blown away, but the power elephants were only ever meant to be a one-hit wonder, so we'll never know if Clarinetto made it out. Although he was a fan of the leader of the wrong side of World War II, so I think he can just stay away. That's okay.